Hey, what's up? My name's Todd and I work on old speakers. So, hey, if you're a subscriber, welcome back. If you're new to this channel, first time you checked it out, I hope you enjoy it. So today, I'm going to be working on a set of vintage RadioShack realistic Tandy MC-1201s. This is a 8-inch two-way acoustic suspension or sealed design. So this is going to be a pretty good one. I think it'll be quick. I think it'll go smooth, and I'm all prepared with my notepad to kind of explain to you how I go through a vintage RestoMod. First, I'm going to listen to them. Okay. How do they sound? Is there any deficiencies? Something wrong with them, right? Then I'm going to measure. Okay. So I'm going to do a quick frequency response measurement of one speaker, obviously, and see, what is the response on this speaker? And does it match whatever advertised response I might find online? Okay. Then I'm going to give you some impressions. Now, these are the same impressions that are going through my mind, like kind of before I start on this project. And I can give you a couple of those now, which is to say that actually they sound pretty nice. They're clear, they're detailed, and honestly, as far as bass goes, they have okay bass. They sound a lot better with my subwoofer running, but the way they don't sound terrible. I've not pushed them real hard because they are old. I will probably push them a little bit just to see what they're capable of, especially with bass. But aside from that, yeah, with the slower music, jazz, stuff like that, instrumental, background music, coffee shop music, etc., they actually really do sound nice. So kudos to Realistic on this speaker, because really it's a decent speaker. It's not horrible. But that being said, what's it going to sound like when I really try to do some critical listening, or when I really try to turn it up? I think then I'll start to discover the deficiencies of it and kind of work toward what I'm going to do to improve that. Now, my first thought on this is to put new drivers in it. Okay. I do have a couple of woofers that I already got for it, and I've got a couple different pairs of tweeters that I could use in here, maybe 3 different tweeters I could use in here. So I'd like to do it with as little modification as possible. So I'm going to be pulling out these speakers, the drivers themselves, and then trying to test fit what I have in there. So I'm going to call this gut and test fit. Okay. Now, if the speakers that I'm picking out seem like they're just going to drop right in, beautiful. I don't have to make any cabinet modifications. If for some reason the tweeter needs, extra cutouts for the terminals, or the woofer hole needs to be enlarged a little bit, or the tweeter hole needs to be enlarged a little bit or something, then I'll have to address that. But right now, I'm hoping that what I have just goes in there. Let's see what else is going to happen with these. Okay, crossovers, very important. Okay, because I have a feeling that even though these sound decent, they're probably set up just like any other vintage mass market speaker, which is to say that it's got virtually no crossover at all. Typically what they did in a two-way like this is that they would just run the woofer direct with no, nothing to cut off the high end. So there's no low pass filter typically on these. It usually just runs direct. And then the tweeter is usually just a first order, cutoff. It's just usually a tiny little cheap resistor that's in series with the positive. Depending on the tweeter, it might be a 2.2 or something like that. But basically, they just try to limit the low frequencies from going to the tweeter so that you don't come back for warranty, I guess, right away. But anyway, these little cone tweeters, they actually do put up with a lot of low bass before they blow. But yeah, so anyway, that's kind of the deal with the drivers. The drivers and the crossover. So with my new drivers, or even with these drivers, I'll definitely want a crossover in there. So I do have a crossover chosen for it. And it is a second order, or it's a 12 dB per octave roll off on this, and it's I think it's 3,500 hertz is actually the cutoff range. So that should be a perfect match for the tweeter and the woofer that I'm using for this. The other thing is binding posts, because right now on the back of these, it's got the old school like screws. So basically, I'm going to have to, maybe do some cutting to fit some things. So I'm just going to put kind of a question mark, cut and fit. Normally I brace cabinets too. These ones, though, it's a pretty small cabinet, and surprisingly, they already have a brace in here, because I did take a sneak peek inside of here. They've got a brace and they've got fiberglass insulation. So huge plus there, because a lot of these cheap old speakers didn't have either. They didn't have any bracing and they didn't have any insulation. So, kudos to Realistic on that too. But basically the terminal, it's a 5-way binding post instead of the screws. Talked about the crossover. The crossover I'm using, I've got to actually solder the leads to. I've got wiring that I'm going to have to solder the leads to. On these, I'll probably use either a 14 gauge or a 16 gauge pure copper wire for it. And, one cool thing for the front. So these are like painted like flat black, and you can tell that they're different colors, probably because they make these things, in such huge quantities. I don't know, maybe the inside's black on this one and they put it in backwards, or maybe it's just that the paint is faded or it didn't get enough coverage. Whatever the reason, they don't match. But I was thinking, well, should I paint them, or should I try something cool that I used to do in the past, which was to use the acoustic felt on the baffles. So I think on these I'm going to try the acoustic felt, and I've already ordered some and I've got it here, so I'll show you that. But basically the acoustic felt, what that does, especially on a speaker that has got this kind of old school big baffle design, is it does help some of these higher frequencies that are coming off the woofer and the tweeter. It helps them to not kind of collect in front of the speaker and diffract each other and cancel each other out, because as these sound waves are coming out, that felt is helping to absorb a lot of that excess energy. Okay, so mainly what you're hearing is what's coming off the front. It works. I've used it in the past. We'll see if it works on this too. Let's see what else. I plan on leaving this as a sealed design. I want to try that. Just go with the acoustic suspension approach on this, because really my biggest concern with acoustic suspension and sealed boxes over the years has been that they don't have enough output, enough bass output. But since I've been running subwoofers, which a lot of people do, where this thing cuts off really doesn't, matter that much. So to try to, get the most of the bass through a bass reflex design on a small set of speakers, is it going to achieve much? Probably. I mean, it'll probably make it sound a little deeper, but it's still not going to be like deep enough to where it's going to make an impactful difference to your listening experience. So it's going to be one of those, hey, that sounds better kind of things. But I think in lieu of the added pressure, sound pressure level from the bass reflex port, is I would probably prefer the more articulate, tight sound from the acoustic suspension. I've done one, I just did one actually, the big tall 3-way Nico speakers that I did, and I was really impressed. I mean, and they still have plenty of bass. So I'm going to try that first in these. It does have insulation in it. I might try to add more. I've got to do the calculations for the woofer because I've got to look at the volume of the box. So calculate the woofers, okay? Because I'm going to do that two different ways. One, I'm going to look at the manufacturer or vendor information and see what they suggest. Then I'm going to run it through an app I have. It's called Speaker Box Lite, I think. Speaker Box Pro, something like that. And I'm going to plug it in and see what happens, see if it comes up with the same results or different results. And the advantage to that app is that I can also tell what kind of a response characteristic the sealed box will have. All right, well, that was a lot. Yes, these do have grills too, and the grills are in perfect shape. They are old school, like just perforated plastic with a kind of like a flock or something on the outside. So I'll show you those. They're pretty cool. Outside of these cabinets is kind of washed out and dry. I don't think anybody ever really took good care of these. The wood veneer is really dry on them. So I think that the first thing I'll try is wood conditioner. I do have some conditioner that I bought that's specifically for wood veneer. So I'm going to try that on these speakers and see what happens. So anyway, hey, thanks for joining me today. If you dig this kind of content, please, if you're not already a subscriber, click the subscribe button. I don't put out a ton of videos, but if you want to know when I do, hit the notification icon or notification bell. That'll let you know when I put out a new video. Yeah, what else can I tell you? Comments, suggestions, questions, all that stuff, I encourage you. And the other thing is, all these speakers that I do eventually wind up on my website for sale. So if you are into speakers, but maybe don't feel like doing the whole DIY thing, but you'll like the concept and the idea of the vintage speaker or the DIY speaker or the RestoMod speaker, and you just want to buy it, you'll find it on my website once I'm done with it. Anyway, that's it, man. Thanks for joining me today, and I'm going to get to getting on these speakers.